Hey, welcome everybody to this month's webinar, Picking the Picture. Like I said earlier, I think I hit a nerve on this one because either people are really interested in this topic or people have a lot of time on their hands during Thanksgiving week, or maybe a little bit of both. I mean, I know this is an important thing. Last month, I did a webinar in regards to how you just speed up the workflow. And then I had a couple of people say, okay, it's fine and well once you speed up the workflow, but what happens when you've got all your bad ones called out? How do you go about picking the ones you really, really like? So that's what we're going to explore today is what I call picking the picture. And as always, if you've ever spent any time listening to me, one of the things I really, because this is the way I think, one of the things I really try to do in these webinars is to really boil everything down to its essentials and its fundamentals because I try to simplify the world around me all the time, try to make my life simple, try to make everything else simple. So the things we're going to talk about, it's a pretty simple approach. And with simplicity, it becomes really easy to memorize. So before I get any further, first of all, thanks for everybody for being with me today. And my name, if you don't know me, my name is Russell Graves. I'm coming to you live from the barn at Hackberry Farm, Dodge City, Texas. It is a gray and dreary day outside today. We had some rain yesterday and the clouds haven't cleared off yet, so it's cool. And I took the opportunity to come out in the barn today and build a fire. I wish we had smell-o-vision also, and instead of just being able to see and hear me. I wish you could see what, or I wish you could smell what it smells like in here. It's got that smell of oak wood smoke a little bit, just a slight hint of it. Got a candle going over there in the corner. I also have a cup of coffee here going with me right now that my wife just brought me a few minutes ago before we started. So it's a wonderful day here. I'm glad you're with me, and let's go and get started. So one of the things about picking the picture, and I've got a few notes here. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notepad that I write notes on before you start these things. One of the things that I think it's important for you to develop a skill in picking the picture is it helps you develop a style. I remember one time someone told me that if I pause every now and then, there's still people coming in to the waiting room too. Oops. I remember one time someone told me that they really like when they see my pictures in a magazine, they know it's, oh, there we go. They know they're mine because they all kind of have that same signature sort of look. And so that signature look and developing a style of your own comes back to just being consistent in the kind of pictures that you showcase to everybody. And so that's what we're going to talk about today are the things that I look at when I'm picking the pictures that I want to showcase to everybody, whether it's in the magazine work that I do or whether it's on my blog at hackberryfarm.com or in any Facebook, social media, anywhere else. Ultimately, and I hate to use this word, but I think, it's universal that's true as an artist, as a photographic artist, I think that's one of the things you strive to do is take pictures in a way when people look at them, they're like, oh, that's Lloyd Massey's pictures. I'd recognize those things anywhere. And so that's what you strive to do. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today takes a little bit of muscle memory. It takes remembering those little things that we look at and those little nuances that you look at each and every time. Uh, and then also kind of in a direct sort of way, this is also sort of in the genre of speeding up your workflow too, because if you pre-visualize what that ideal picture in your mind looks like, and you've got a photographic style developed, when you're in the field, it helps you become more and more discerning on what to take pictures of and what not to take pictures of, or what to really focus on, what not to focus on in terms of subject matter. And so by doing so, you become more discerning. Uh, you become a better photographer in the end because you know what you want, you know how to get it, you know what it's going to look like in the end, and it helps speed up the whole process in the end. So, with that said, let's just go through a few pictures. This is kind of the style I like, and I do this all the time. Uh, I like pictures like this where you've got a really defined subject and you're making good eye contact and the background's out of focus. I shot this. A lot of these pictures you're going to see today, I shot right here on Hackberry Farm. I've got a wetland I'm staring at right now out the north window that's about 250 yards from my house. And these little guys, they're about that long. I mean, they're about an inch long. They're tiny, tiny, but they come out in the spring and it's always fun to go hunting for these little tree frogs when they do come out because they've got the most expressive eyes and they give you the most expressive look. And so over time, as I've taken more and more pictures, I still continue to refine my style but I've still got that same base style that I use, the out of focus background, in focus subject, uh, and then really, really, really good light. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to talk mainly about picking the picture. It's sort of going to be an all-encompassing genre. It's going to be, you're going to see mostly wildlife pictures because that's what I'm going to talk about a lot. Because to me, it's easier to show examples using wildlife pictures. But I'm also going to use some pictures of a recent Cowboys and Canyonlands workshop I did. I'll also show you some examples on landscape and kind of what I think about what I look for in landscape photography. So it's really going to be a little bit of catch-all. And as always, as we go through, if you have any questions or comments, I've got all these. I'm talking to you from my laptop right now, so I don't have a big screen where I can see all the windows. But pop a question in the chat, wait till the end, and give me the question, and I'll be sure to answer it towards the end because we'll have some time towards the end for some Q&A sessions. So, with with that said, that's the question. You take a bunch of pictures, how do you pick out the best ones? And I think that's something that uh, I still ask myself from time to time. How do I know which one's the best one? Well, I've developed a strategy for me, and I hope you learn from this strategy on the specific things I look for. I'm going to show you where the rubber meets the road, as they say. Some specific strategies that I look for to help me determine which picture is uh, is one I'm going to share, which picture I may archive, and they're all. I'm going to go through the first set of strategies right here uh, that I'll talk about, and I've created this acronym I call FEAT. And to get a picture like this, it's quite a feat, and I say that for a reason because what FEAT means. Still got people coming in. It's an acronym I created, which means this is the first set of things I look for. Is it in focus? That's pretty simple. If it's not in focus, is it purposefully out of focus? Because there's sometimes I'll take pictures. I'll show you an example here in a second that I purposely try to make almost everything out of focus. So does it meet my requirements at the time of what that focus means? And I know there's ways now that you can, there's third-party software that you can use that will sort of fix the focus. I don't try to ever rely on that just because I think if you've used some of those software programs, not to demean them because they do amazing things, but sometimes if they're trying to correct bad focus, it makes things look pretty funky. And so I try to get it right in the camera as much as I can. It's all part of the discernment of knowing what I want and knowing when to take the picture. And so focus is the first thing. Second thing I look at, is it exposed properly where I can uh, where I can be able to save the picture. In the past with film, if you miss the exposure, you miss the exposure. There wasn't much you could do to fix it. And then when digital came along, all of a sudden you can miss it by a stop or two and, still be able to be able to make a good picture out of it if you miss the exposure. Well, now with mirrorless cameras, and dare to say, I think most people are using mirrorless cameras now if you turn on the what you see is what you get feature in all these cameras where they do exposure simulation, now it's hard to miss the exposure because there's a lot of times, and you've heard me talk about it before if you've watched many of my webinars, where the camera is always going to get the scene right, the way the camera is telling you to meter. It's going to get the scene right. But there's times like when you're on a snowy background or if the animal's against a dark background, it just won't get it right. Against the dark background is this one right here on the left. That mule deer was standing in deep shadow and was backlit. And if I let the camera decide what the exposure is going to be, and I shot this with the DSLR, this was before I had mirrorless. If I let the camera decide what the exposure should be, the camera is going to tend to overexpose it. It's going to make it too bright. And so I just knew instinctively from experience that I had to underexpose it a little bit. But there's times when the camera will do that. But with the exposure compensation now, I mean, not exposure compensation, with exposure simulation, it's pretty easy to dial the camera in where you're getting the exposure correctly each and every time. So I'll look at the focus when I'm trying to keep or cull in the beginning. I look at the focus. I look at the exposure. Is the exposure close enough where I can fix it and get it right? And then once those two criteria are met, then I start looking at something that's a little more subjective. And that's action. Is it have the kind of action that I like? And I'll talk more specifically about the kind of action that I like here in a little bit. So does it have the kind of action I like? And then the T of feet is timing. Did I time the picture right? Did it, there's a few, and again, I'll talk about these things where the eyes wide open, were the ears right, where all these little nuances in the end when you're deciding which is your best picture in a series of 200. That's what I refer to as timing. And so more specifically on these, focus really to me has more to do with than just the mechanical act of focusing the camera. You know, we all want really, really, really sharp pictures. This coyote right here was taken on my place. I was sitting in the blind and he walked out one morning. In fact, this morning when I walked outside, there was a coyote about 50 yards in the woods from my house. I could hear him barking. And I don't know if he was barking at me or you could hear the chickens and he was barking at them. But either way, he was looking for a meal and he was pretty close. I never saw him to take a picture, but I'd love to have seen him. But this coyote, when it came out, you know, the light was perfect. Everything was perfect with it. And this will, if you remember this picture, it'll check some of the criteria I'm going to talk about. But, you know, the main thing is when you're talking about focus, that, you know, the whole subject's in focus. But as you learn in wildlife photography 101, the most critical thing to be in focus is always going to be the eyes. And so here's an example I talked about just a minute ago where 99% of this picture is out of focus, but it's out of focus in a way that was on purpose. This coyote was running in one time and I was had me a little ground blind made. I was really camouflaged sitting on the ground. And as it ran past me, just 15, 20 yards away, I made the conscious decision. I'm going to see if I can get a panning shot of it. So I slowed my shutter speed down, had my camera on a tripod. It makes these kind of shots so much easier. And if you have your camera on a tripod and you can swing along with it, it eliminates one of the axes of movement that you can possibly do. And as he swung past, I shot at the shutter speed I thought would give me the correct amount of motion, 1/15th of a second. And when I got it back, you know, or not say when I got it back, I'm used to doing that with film. When I looked at the picture after the coyote ran off, the thing that was most important that was in focus was that eyeball. And to date, this remains one of my favorite, not just coyote pictures, but wildlife pictures I've ever taken, because it's one of those times when everything you sort of pre-visualized and you made it happen came together. The light was perfect. The action was perfect. The the stuff that I wanted to be blurred is blurred. The stuff I didn't want to be blurred is tack sharp. And so when we talk about focus, you can forgive yourself if you got good action like this, as long as the eyeball's in focus. I don't necessarily think the whole image has to be in focus. And then exposure, like I say here, exposure is just a straightforward way to evaluate the image. It's either you get it right or you get it wrong. I mean, you can be close. I mean, this is, you know, this is one of the times I've heard people say in the past, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I think we can add photography to that list of things where close only counts. Because again, if you with the software we have today, if you get it half a stop, full stop out, you can usually fix it pretty good. And so on the exposure, but again, to save me time from doing that, I usually try to get it right inside the camera. This is one of those examples here that you expose for the sky, because if you let the camera decide, the camera is going to try to expose for, you know, it's going to make the sky too bright, and it's going to make the animal uh, more detail show up. When I shot this picture, I was going for a silhouette. I had the camera actually dug a hole, put the camera down in the hole, fed corn beside it because I knew these pigs would come out, and I was sitting in my truck a couple of 100 yards away with my camera being able to fire it remotely. And then when the pig walked out, I just started eating. I just started taking pictures, and so that was on purpose. But I knew to get that shot, I had to underexpose the scene, and that way the pig would go dark and the sky would be properly exposed. And so it's again, exposure is just a straightforward way of determining whether it's a good picture or not. And that's such an easy thing to do. I tell people all the time, if you mess up on a picture, and don't feel bad because we all do. I mean, last week we did a workshop here at this spot in Caddo Lake. I haven't gone through my pictures from last week's workshop yet, but I fully expect for me to have messed up a lot of times on those pictures, whether it's I don't have my focus point set right. I've messed up on the exposure. There's going to be something. And you know, it's okay. And but what I tell people all the time is if you've got a bad picture, don't fall in love with something that's not going to love you back. And a bad picture is never going to love you back. So I tend to, if the exposure is bad or the focus is bad, I delete it and I move on from there and try to just focus on the keepers that I do have. And then action. So ultimately, I look for action to differentiate between, is it an image I'm going to show a lot of people, or is it one that's just going to be in my archive? You can have a static image and it still be a perfectly fine image, like this bull elk. It's one of the biggest I've ever seen in my life. It's enormous. And I've got some pictures of just him standing there being an elk. And they're in good light and they're perfectly fine. But if I had to choose one to show, would I rather choose what I call the yearbook picture, or what I choose one that shows some action. I've got a video on my website. I don't mean to overtly plug it. When I say yearbook picture, I need to explain a little bit. Uh, I've got this strategy in my mind that every species of wildlife I come across, I try to take three pictures of it. One picture is what I call the yearbook shot. Think about your yearbook shot back in high school. All it was is a picture of you, just where you could identify who you were. Nothing special. It's not you playing sports. It's not you singing in the choir. It's just you sitting in a stool, just so people can identify, put a face with the name underneath it. And that's kind of how I think about with wildlife shots. I try to take a yearbook shot. I try to take an action shot. That's what we've got here. And then of the animal doing something, the animal does. And then the third thing I always try to do is take a wider shot showing the animal in its environment. So I've got all three shots of this same elk. I've got a yearbook shot, I've got an action shot, as you can see here. Then I've got another couple of shots where you can kind of see him in the bigger meadow that he's in, with the mountains in the background and all that. So I took those three shots. That's when I talk about yearbook shot, that's what I'm talking about. I say I always look for action, aside from the mountain lion killing something, which I've never seen a mountain lion kill anything before, but the action shot is just getting a shot of a mountain lion. So you can see here, this mule deer here is doing a lip curl. Excuse me. They do that during the mating season, when they can test the air. If they're in the presence of a doe, they can test the air for pheromones and be able to tell whether or not she's ready to breed. It's called the Flehmen response. You'll see mule deer do it, elk, bison, any kind of ungulate. Cows do it. I mean, not cows. Cows don't do it. Bulls do it. Cows may do it occasionally, but bulls do it if you've got cattle that live nearby. And so that's what that animal's doing. Turkey gobbling. I got to tell you an aside here. If you've watched many of these webinars, sometimes we have the chicken lottery, where if it's warm in here, I'll open the door to get a breeze blowing through, and we'll give away some kind of door prize for the first person that spots a chicken walk through the door, because the chickens will come in the barn like they own the place. But recently, last spring, I love turkeys. This is a wild turkey here, by the way. I love turkeys, and so I found a place in California that would sell me some turkey eggs. And so we incubated 6 eggs. 4 were born. 1 didn't make it past its first day. And then one of the 3 that were left got unfortunately killed by a chicken snake. And so we've got 2 turkeys left, and now they're fully grown, but they're not fully mature yet, because those things, if I don't make it to the next webinar, blame the turkeys, because those things are like bullies. They're real protective of the hens, because we raised them with chickens. So they think they're a big chicken, but they're real protective of the hens. And if we get close to the hens, they try to peck you. So but turkeys tend to be bullies when they're young like that, and they will outgrow it. So I'm looking forward to starting to share pictures of my homemade turkeys on these webinars with you, because they're going to be pretty cool. They're wild turkeys, and so they've got the look. They look like this one here, but the action, that action is the key part of all this, is just trying to catch stuff in action. And then the timing. You've got action, but then there's also a subset of that I call timing. And in the timing, like it says here, it makes a huge difference on how the image looks. Maybe the time of day that you shoot the picture, when your timing of when you take the image, we'll talk about some of those things here in a minute, or the timing within the overall scheme of thing. And the time of day really has a lot to do with the way the picture looks. I know if you see Bigfoot at noon, you take a picture of Bigfoot at noon. You can't always have things appear and happen when you want them to, but if you can, when it comes to the look of a picture and the overall, whether it's a keeper or not, the time of day you shoot makes a huge difference. Again, I tell everybody a lot when, I told them last week when we were doing our Caddo Lake workshop, I told them that, what time we'd leave in the morning, and it's usually pretty early. And, invariably someone's like, oh, that's pretty early. No one's complaining, but still they make the comment that it's pretty early. And I get it. Nature photography and wildlife photography would be awesome if it started at 10 a.m. But by 10 a.m., the light's already gone, or it's starting to be real contrasty and doesn't look as good. So you do yourself a favor if you just plan the timing your photos at the time when the light looks the best. That's either in the morning or in the evening, or in this case, if you get lucky, it was overcast. I shot this picture about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This was only about a mile from here. I was sitting on the ground camouflage when I saw this thing too. And so you do yourself a favor if you get the timing right, and you just use the light in your favor, which will help really make a huge difference. If this picture would have been taken on a blue sky day with this at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with the sun overhead, I never would have shown it to you. But because the timing, I timed it when it was overcast, the light was soft, makes all the difference in the world. And the same way with here, whether we're talking sunrise with the kind of the golden hour and using the color of the sky to backlight it, like in this picture of the white-tailed deer silhouetted on the ridge line, or the sun coming up over the cypress in Caddo Lake, or even this was a Yellowstone great horned owl giving us that kind of gruffy look. Actually, he was sort of shaking his feathers out because he was about to fly. And I don't know if you go to Yellowstone much, but I don't know if it's the same owl, but I've seen this great horned owl at least half a dozen times in the same spot. It's right in the Mammoth Hot Springs area. You just got to look out for it because he's pretty camouflaged, but I've seen him multiple times. But the timing makes all the difference in the world. So that's feet: focus, exposure, action, timing. When it has to do with when you take the picture, whether you keep it or not, whether you decide that you want to uh, uh, show it to other people, or whether you decide you want to keep it in archives. Like this picture here, this is actually, as far as timing is concerned, and I'll talk about this a little more in detail in another slide or two. But as far as timing is concerned, this was actually my favorite of the two. This was the same coyote I showed you earlier that was running past that I did the pan shot of. And one of the things you learn, it's kind of a country boy skill that I learned a long time ago. If you see a coyote running through the field, if you just say a word, say hey, say anything to it, they'll always stop and look back almost 100% of the time. If you don't believe me, when I say that, if you ever see a coyote running, just say something to it. Say hey or hello or something like that. They'll almost always stop and look. And believe me when I say I can speak to animals like that, because people have been with me before, like Lloyd Massey, that's in the audience right now. I told him one time I can talk to the turkeys and make them gobble on command, and him and the rest looked at me like they were skeptical, but I can make turkeys gobble on command, just like, and you can too when you learn the trick, just like you can make the coyote stop. So anyway, coyote was running past me. I just said, hey, stop for a second. I was ready. It turned, looked back. It wasn't looking at me. It was looking where he thought he heard the sound come from. And he had two different poses, one ears up, one with the ears back, and that was the timing. I shot a picture of him with the ears back. I thought it looked kind of better. Now that's going to run in contrast with something I'm going to tell you here in a minute, but it's every picture has its own different look, and that's the decision I made between ears up or ears back. I like when he was looking in the distance like that. I like the ears to be back. It kind of implied a little more action to me. Okay, so again, I'll repeat feed again. Is it in focus where you want it to be in focus? If so, it's a keeper. Did the exposure come out right? If it is, or can you fix it? If it is, it's a keeper. And those are just whether we keep them or not, or delete them or not. The next thing, this is whether you show people the picture or not. Does it have the kind of action you want to convey? And then within the action, was your timing on point? Was the light right? Was the body language right? We'll talk about body language here in a minute. Were all those little things right? And I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, but once you kind of develop that sort of workflow in your mind, and I'll add this to the list. When I send the notes today, I will create a pretty simple workflow that you can sort of follow. Whether you're talking about, you take a picture. Is it a landscape picture? Here's the workflow. Is it a wildlife or any kind of animal picture? Here's the workflow from there. I'll share that with y'all today on these same things to help you understand. Every time I go through there, I've got it memorized in my head now. That's what I talked about, the muscle memory earlier. After a while, you just kind of get used to what you're looking for, and you're able to go through the pictures pretty quick. And again, I can't say this enough. You're also able to kind of go through that muscle memory when you're in the field and decide, is it worth taking a picture, or should I just look at it right now? And so I do a lot of that myself. And with, again, all these things sort of that we're talking about add up to help develop your style and help make you a better photographer ultimately. And so what I do when this is both in the field and at home, I pay attention to all these things. I pay attention to the legs, the ears, the way the animal's facing, the animal's movements, or the angle of the wings. If we're talking about birds in flight, pay attention to all of that stuff. And that's, again, when I'm back at home going through the pictures, if they meet my criteria on focus and they meet my criteria on exposure, then then I start kind of breaking them down by the action and the timing of it all if it looks good. And so the leg position, I think they should imply action. You know, we all like the static shot of them standing still, but when we're talking about action, the way the legs are positioned really, really, really does make a difference. And I'm wading into the weeds here a little bit, but if you look at this picture, this is from a recent Cowboys in Canyonlands workshop. This is a cowboy running across a ridge top at sunset, or trotting his horse across a ridge top at sunset. And if you can see on this picture, I'm not crazy about the leg position because number one, the back leg looks like a tripod. You know, it looks like he has three legs. And so that's one thing. The second thing, see how stiff, even though the legs are splayed, and you can definitely tell the horse is moving, and you can tell by the way its tail is sticking out, and by the way the rider's leaning a little bit, that the horse is moving. But I think there's a better action than that. So literally 2 frames before this, and I just shot a lot of pictures of the same sequence and picked out the two I like. 2 frames before this one, we had this picture here. And to me, the leg position is a lot better. I mean, and it's just subtle. But these are the things I look for when I'm deciding. This is the picture I'm going to show people. This is the picture I'm not. In fact, I think this picture here was on the blog and was the feature image in the blog. But see how the legs are bent back? They're not stiff. It doesn't look like it's just standing there because the legs are bent back. If I'd have been a little bit lower angle, you know, you could have saw the both front hooves off the ground, but instead you can see one. And even the back legs are separated just enough. You can see that little crack of light between them that helps the horse actually does have 4 legs. And then the rider is virtually the same. His body position hasn't changed, but it's just that subtle difference in the leg position. Here's another example here. This white-tailed deer that I photographed in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, which by the way is a complete brute of a deer. Though when you get a deer that has a drop tine like that, those guys are really, really special. Now, there's a lot of pictures I wish I could change different there's a couple things I wish I could change about this picture, but this is how it came out of the camera. Number one, I guess I could have used generative AI to erase the grass, but the grass really doesn't bother me too bad. But I think more than anything, I really like the leg position. There's a lot of it, even though it's a still picture, it's that whole thing about a picture's worth 1,000 words. There's a lot of things that are implied about this picture here. You can see his legs are bent. He's leaning forward. His back legs are planted because that's what's giving him the power to propel him forward. And everything about the body position of this animal is what I really like. So as I'm picking which picture to show, if I've only got 2 pictures to choose, if I've got a real good static picture of him standing there, or if I'm going to show people a picture of him moving, if there's no other discernible difference, I'm almost always going to pick the animal showing movement. But again, to backtrack, that movement comes with a caveat because to show you these pictures again, I really like when the legs are in a good position. And go look at dog shows. I mean, a big thing. If you ever watch the Westminster Dog Show when it comes on every February, I think it is. A big thing about what they do is they get those dogs set up and they position their legs right, or uh, when you go look at any horse racing picture you see, or go look at any be a nerd like me who loves agriculture and go look at cattle magazines that show that these high-powered bulls and all their DNA lineage that they have, and pay attention to how they all get set up. They all get set up with a good leg position. And I think it's the same way with photography is if you pay attention to the leg position when you're trying to imply action in a photo, I just think it makes a huge difference. Again, look at the picture on the right, look at the picture of the deer, a lot of similarities. Now that's an acquired look. That's my favorite leg position. Yours may be something different, but the way I think about it and the way I like the way the legs look, to me, this pose right here implies the most action. And that comes back to timing. It's just when the animal's getting ready to move, you just got to lay down on the hammer on the camera and just take lots of pictures. And you're going to have some that get thrown away, but you hope you time it right where you get a picture like this. And then the next thing, I know I said this about the coyote earlier that I liked it on that particular picture, the ears backwards, because to me, it with the ears backwards, it looked like that coyote was really thinking about what he just heard. But for the most part, I like the ears pointed forward on the animal. Here's side by side pictures of the same deer. I'm showing you a lot of deer pictures today because it's the rut right now for white-tailed deer, and we've been seeing a lot of them around, and I just love taking deer pictures. But on this one ear is forward and one ear is back. But given the preference, just time it right. Same deer, just a half a second later, he put both ears forward. And to me, if you pay attention to that, again, if I'm trying to decide between the two pictures, which one I like better, which one I'm going to showcase on my Facebook page, I'm going to pick the one on the right as opposed to the one on the left. And in fact, from a magazine standpoint, I think I'm right about this, but I think the picture on the right has been on the magazine cover before. And even though they had a choice of a lot of different pictures, I think this is the one that made it because I think that alertness is what we all want to see in animals and want to see them alert like that. And I think this is just a better look overall. And then the overall body position. I learned this a long time ago. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. I like when animals do what I call the power pose. If you're taking a yearbook picture of an animal, maybe it's not doing any action. It's just kind of standing there looking. I don't always accomplish this, but at least I think it in my mind and try to manifest it and try to send brain waves to the animals to do something different. And if you shot a lot of wildlife pictures and you've never tried to get the animal to think what you're thinking, you're not telling the truth because I think we've all done it before where you'll be thinking to yourself, just turn this way, just turn this way, trying to send them mental telepathy through the airwaves. But I like it when animals do what's called the power pose. And this is not the power pose. This is a couple of weekends ago here on the farm. There's a deer. By the way, I had the best blind in the world. I was standing at my front door with my pajama pants on and a t-shirt with my door barely cracked open, shooting pictures of this deer on the place. Just a couple of Saturday, yeah, just barely, just a little more than it's a week and a half ago is when it was actually. And anyway, this is a good yearbook shot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this picture. It's in focus. The exposure's right. The timing was good. I mean, if anything, if I'm critiquing it at all, I've got other pictures where there's not another deer standing behind it, but I had the other deer standing behind it for a reason. Because the weakest picture you can take of an animal, and this comes down to body position, is if their butt's facing you. I know sometimes they look over the shoulder and that can be okay, but really, to me, my least favorite animal pose is when their butt's facing you. A long time ago, a magazine editor, I sent him some pictures. This was in an agriculture magazine. Sent him a bunch of pictures. This was when we all shot slides. Sent a bunch of pictures of some cows out in the pasture, something I got really good at and had a lot of magazine covers of just cows being cows. But he commented back via email. This has been probably in the late 90s, early 2000s. Commented back that you need to quit sending me pictures of cows' butts. No one wants to see them. And he was right. I mean, it's a poor pose. So now, if you can, I mean, if that's the only picture you can take, I'm going to take it 100% of the time. If he's always facing away, but every now and then he'll stand up and turn towards you and look, I'll always take it. But for me, this is the power pose like this. This is what I always try to get every animal. If I'm going to do a yearbook shot of every animal, he or she is posed like this. It's the kind of that 3/4 inch shot towards you, maybe looking at you, maybe looking away. Something that you can kind of work with compositionally speaking, like on this one. If you notice here, if you think about the rule of thirds and what we all learned, that tic-tac-toe grid that runs across the pictures, his head almost perfectly intersects with where the upper leftmost grid intersects, giving them plenty of space to look out across the scene like that. That picture to me checks a lot of boxes on the way I like it. But that's the power pose. If we're talking about body position, sometimes it's worth just kind of waiting them out, wait until they turn good, and if you're going to take a lot of pictures of animals, I'd rather take a lot of pictures of this pose as opposed to taking a lot of pictures of with his rear end facing me. Another reason too, well, I'll get to that in a second. I was going to say another reason why one of the things I famously do when we're in the field is I tend to take a lot of pictures. And the reason for it is because of the eyes. When you take a lot of pictures of wildlife, you're just creating easy insurance to make sure the eyes look good and the ears look good and all those little nuances we're talking about in the end. By the way, let me go back. So this picture here, So far, it checks all the boxes that we talked about for the body position, the ears, and then I'm going to talk about the eyes in a minute. It doesn't have a ton of action, but that's good enough. That's a good yearbook shot. But when we talk about the eyes, one of the things that I like to see best in wildlife, I like it when the eyes are open and alert. I think when people look at a picture, that's the first thing they look at in the eyes. And if the eyes are vibrant and they're wide open, they're not half closed or they're not closed at all, the animal just looks more vibrant. Uh, and so that's one of the arguments I have for really taking a lot of pictures because you never know when an animal's going to blink. And if your shutter's going off or you blink when the animal blinks, you may never know it. So if you're in front of an animal and it may be doesn't matter if it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, it may be an every other day occurrence. I think you do yourself a favor by just shooting a lot of pictures, having your camera on a high frame rate, and giving yourself the insurance that the eyes are going to be open and alert. And you can see this bobwhite quail. Birds are bad about it because birds have that nictitating membrane, that little clear eyelid that goes down over their eyes, and it just when you're at a distance from birds, it's not always easy to see. And so one of the things that I try to do is go back and or try to just take a lot of pictures to ensure against that. Oops, I went too far backwards. I was going to show you. I was just going to recap what I just talked about. That in wildlife, pay attention to all these things: the ears, the legs, the way the animal's facing, the movements, and then the angle of wings. And I'll talk about the birds. Leg position should always, even if there's not running, I think it's better if one leg's kind of in front of the other, just to imply movement. Uh, the ears, like I said, I like them generally pointed forward, and then the body position, the power pose that I talked about. I think if you compare these same buck, two different pictures, I think that picture's a good, it checks all the boxes. It's a good picture. But I think that shot, if I'm going to pick one or the other, is going to be the shot I'm going to pick just because its ears are alert, eyes are wide open, it's got the power pose in play. It's not moving, but that's okay. But if it had one leg up or something, bonus points for that. If one leg is up and he's got that implied action in there. But I'm not throwing this one away either because it's still a nice shot. And then we talked about the eyes, open, alert, or best. And for wings, and again, the things I just talked about for animals, for mammals and stuff are that's just my personal preferences. I'm not going to say you can't take a picture of an animal, a good picture of an animal with its eyes half open, or I'm not going to say you can't take a good picture of an animal with no implied movement. Of course you can, but I mean, if I'm trying to pick the ideal picture that I always ask people, if you could take an ideal picture of this situation, what's it going to be? If I could design my ideal picture, it would meet all those criteria we just talked about. And even on birds, like wing position, of all the contests I've judged and the critiques I've done over the time, the wing position still really does matter to me. And personal preference, I like it when the wings are level or down uh like that. So duck species, they have this feature called the speculum. And if you look on the back edge of the wing where the colors are, if you could, if you just saw the wing of that duck without seeing the whole duck, you'd know because of the coloration it's a pintail. And mallards are different on that speculum, that little bar of color that's at the bottom of the wings. All the a lot of the ducks, all the duck species have a different speculum, but I think it looks best when their wings are either level like this one is here or they're in the down position. Now, this one I included just so you can see. I know this isn't right when I say this, but I have no better way of articulating it. The thing that I just don't like about wings up, even though it's a nice picture and I'm not going to throw it away because it's in here, given a preference, I'd rather have wings down because it's almost for a lot of bird species, most of the colors on the top anyway. The bottoms are usually kind of bland like this one is. Even on sandhill cranes, you'll see kind of a rusty reddish tinge to the top of the wings, and even the top of the feathers are black. But when you've got when 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 the wings are up, it reminds me of looking at somebody wearing a tank top with their arms up. That's not something I want to see. So I don't like looking at people's armpits, and so it's like you're seeing the bird's armpits when you're looking like that. So again, when you're picking through the pictures, if you're trying to pick which one that you like, as opposed to which one you're going to show, as opposed to which one you're going to just archive, again, not a bad picture, just not the wing position I like. I like it down because you can start seeing, even though sandhill cranes are kind of blandly colored birds, are mostly gray. They're beautiful birds, but they're mostly gray. But you can see with the wings down, I think it's just implies a little more motion, implies a little more power. Plus, it helps showcase the colors on top of the wing. And even there's a silhouette of one. Even when you can't see the colors, I just think it looks more graceful, kind of fills out the picture a whole lot more. The light doesn't show them that good, but the mallards almost have a bluish purple speculum there. You can see it's a what I'm talking about, that on the end of the wing. I just think it looks awesome when they've got their wings out like that, because all the 110 years that we've been flying around as humans, that it's amazing when you look at the structure of a bird's wings like that right there, how a lot of the same structure mimics what you're going to see on commercial airlines and or commercial airplanes or jet fighters or anything like that. It's just I think there's so much art in the way birds are just built and designed. I just think it's really, really cool. I've noticed we had some few folks coming in late, and if you that's one of you, just know I'm recording this webinar, and is if you missed the first 45 minutes of it, then you'll get a recording of it. And as a general rule too, I'm not being scolding when I say this, so don't take it wrong, but uh every webinar I do, we always start them at 12 Central. And so and I always try to communicate that in emails. So anyway, but you'll get a recording of this, you'll be able to see everything I talked about, and I'll tell you in a minute. If you have any further questions, uh feel free to send me emails after the fact even. Landscapes. I if I'm if I'm if I'm really if people ask me what kind of if I was forced to tell you what kind of photographer I am, I really like everything outdoors. I can do studio photography. I know how to do all that stuff. I just don't enjoy it as much. But I really like going out and finding really pretty pictures of anything in the natural landscape, including agriculture, including cattle, including cowboys, all that kind of stuff. I really like going out and photographing. Uh, I'd never put myself on the level of a landscape master like Ansel Adams or anybody like that. Uh, and so I, but I do like taking pictures of landscapes. And so I've got a few simple rules I go by when I'm taking pictures of landscapes. And that is, I like simple compositions and I try to watch the edges all the time. And what I mean by simple compositions, I try not to make the picture do too much, because there's sometimes I also look at a pretty scene. I think we've all been there before, but I just can't figure out how to make it a really, really, really nice composition because there's just too much going on. You have beautiful mountains, beautiful trees, a lot of rocks in the foreground. You just can't figure out where that optimum spot is from where I'm standing to be able to take a good picture. I'll still take a picture and still make it look as pretty as I can, but sometimes I just can't figure it out. I like simple compositions. I won't go too far into this, but I like S curves in pictures and I like triangles in pictures, in landscape pictures. And I did another webinar uh, called Composition Case Studies, and you can look back and see all that on the YouTube channel. And then I'll include a link to that too as well in the notes when we finish them up. But I like simple compositions. Again, I look for simple curves and then simple leading lines that form triangles. And I also tend to watch the edges. And that's a thing that a lot of people get caught up on, where little extraneous things like limbs or sticks or something that doesn't look like it needs to be there uh, have a tendency of creeping into the edge of your pictures. I'm as guilty about it as anyone else, but I still try to watch the edges. That doesn't mean anything can't touch the edges, but I still try to find that happy medium when stuff is touching the edge, uh that it looks pleasing, like this picture here in Great Smoky Mountains. Took that back in October when I was there. Uh, this is a good example of just the curvy lines of the river running off into this waterfall right there. Or curvy lines, S curves of it leading, of the road leading uh, through the meadow and towards the mountains over there. And it's kind of the unknown of it going around the trees there. You can see here, it's just a pretty simple composition. Didn't have any kind of crazy angle, standing right in the middle of the road, and then just metering on the trees to make sure the trees are lit like they're supposed to and the shadows look like they're supposed to. And then just put myself in a position where that line kind of leads off into the distance. Same way here, another S curves, kind of winding your way, a lot of leading lines. I kind of use the landscape photography 101 Bible of how to do compositions in landscape. I've got a place where the water's coming in, I show where it's leaving out. Same way with this one here. You can see where the road's leading in, you can see where the road's leading out, just that whole continuum of that whole continuum of that composition. And I'll say this again as a repeat. I've had several more people kind of come in late, and we've been going out at this for about 50 minutes now. So we start at 12 noon Central. If you're coming in late, don't worry. I've recorded the whole thing, and since you registered for the webinar, you'll get a copy of the recording just sometime later on today when it's all uploaded and ready to roll out. And then even this one, this is it's kind of got a backwards triangle. The base of the triangle is the horizon, and everything from each side of the horizon points to the Yucca. White Sands National Park is where this picture was taken. And so I, again, I try to make definite edges, watch the edges, think of simple compositions. Again, another one from the Great Smoky Mountain National Parks. You can see the triangle, the brick wall that forms into the tree and makes the triangle at the bottom, and then just kind of the focal point of the triangle that where you're looking at the sun in the back from the edges of the picture. All that was by design and to come up with a composition like this one. And this is Acadia National Park is where this one was. And so aside from all the things I talked about on landscape and the things you need to consider when you're picking out your good pictures of wildlife, a few other factors you need to consider I think are really, really important. And number one, just understand that not all pictures can be winners as much as we want them to be. I'm not going to say I've got a million images in my library right now, a million images, and they're not all of them are good technically, and they all got kept. I don't, unless I miss something along the way, I don't keep the bad pictures, the pictures that don't kind of go, follow that the first two factors of that FEAT acronym I told you about, the focus and exposure. If they're bad, I get rid of them. If the composition's bad where I can't retrieve it, I'll get rid of that too. But even of the ones that are left, they're not all going to be winners. It's not like I'm going to share a million pictures on social media and think I'm going to get equal amount of likes on all of them. Some people like more than others. Some are just illustrative in purpose, and I think that's important to recognize. I really like this bear picture, showing a lot of action, and it kind of checks all those boxes like we're talking about. But not all of them can be this bear shaking off right when it got out of the water. And then I think another thing you need to consider is, does it fit the story you're trying to tell? I know more and more people are getting books made of their adventures, and people are getting, these photo groupings of their adventures made. And you usually with a photo grouping or a book or even creating a magazine or something like that, you try to include kind of the show stopping pictures, but a lot of the pictures you include in that need to be supportive pictures of sort of the main idea. Case in point, it's like, well, two cases in point, actually. Number one, it'd be like trying to write a book by using all nouns. You got to kind of have the verbs and the adjectives and all the other parts of speech too to make it all make sense. And so not everything can be a real descriptive noun. You got to have the other parts of speech to be able to tell a good story too. And number two, I told this to the group last week when we were in Caddo Lake. The stars of the show are the cypress trees in the fall. It's just the way it is. But if you're making a book of that, do you really want a book? If you're making a book of that adventure, do you really want a book that just has page after page after page after page of cypress trees in fall colors? I don't think you do. I mean, you can get the book made whatever way you want to, but I think you need to have a series of pictures that help support that story and helps fit that story you're trying to tell. I'll show some examples of this here in a second. Or does it illustrate a concept? I've told this story a lot. One of the nerdy things I like to do is when I see new species of plants that I've never photographed before, I try to take a really good species of plants or trees or any kind of vegetative species. I'll take a picture of it and try to take a really good picture of it. And as such, I'm not going to say I've got the biggest collection of plant and tree pictures in the world and wildflowers, but I've got a pretty good one because I've just take time to do that. And they're nothing fancy. They're kind of scientific in nature, just a way to identify it. It's a yearbook picture, but with plants. But a few years ago, the Nature Conservancy was doing their annual report, and apparently I'm the only guy on the planet that has a good picture of Indian grass because it helped them illustrate a concept. That picture is not going to win any awards, is a good picture, but it's not going to win any awards, but it helped illustrate the concept they were trying to convey about the story, the conservation story they were trying to tell for that particular year. So I think that's important too to think about. And then is it a one of a kind picture that can never be duplicated? Again, if Bigfoot walked out right now, I'm going to pause this webinar and I'm going to take a picture of it. Yeah, I wish the light was better. Yeah, I wish the action was better. Yeah, I wish it was in focus, but I heard a comedian say the other day that maybe the reason that you never see pictures of Bigfoot in focus because it's a blurry animal, and that's the whole genius of Bigfoot being Bigfoot is he's always blurry and you'll never get a clear picture of him. Yeah, if it's a one of a kind picture that can never be duplicated, I'm going to show it off and put it, and let the world see it. And then what may be the future of that image? And that's kind of the crazy thing, because I can tell you now with the new technology we've had come out with just two things, the generative fill or the generative expand, because there's been a couple of pictures in the past that I've shot the animals too close and I shot it too tight, but you're able to add a little bit of out of focus background to it to kind of loosen the composition up a little bit. I've done that before and it works brilliantly. Or or there may be, now the fact that, like I said earlier, I could eliminate a weed in the picture if I wanted to, and the software does a pretty good job of doing that. If there's something in the way or you got it framed too tight, as long as it's in focus and it meets that feet criteria, the timing is good, it's in focus, it's got it's checked all the boxes that you think fits, but maybe it's framed too tight, I wouldn't throw that away either. So there's some other factors you might want to consider when you're trying to decide when you're picking the picture in the end. Here's a good example here. This was a picture I took using a camera trap on my property. The story I was working on was called The Secret Life of Bobcats. By the way, we're going to go over a little bit on time. So I said it's going to be noon to 1 Central Time. But the fact that we're going to go over, I will keep going as long as everyone wants me to keep going. And I know I've got a lot of questions in there, and so stay with me through the question and answer session too. I have nothing pending coming up, so I'll stick with you. But anyway, I was working on a story for a magazine called The Secret Life of Bobcats. And my thesis was pretty simple. And it was that bobcats live all around us. We just don't see them that much. And I knew for a fact that bobcats lived on my property because I'd seen tracks, but I just never saw them. And so one of the things I decided to do, and this is to protect people and bobcats, we lived about a mile from the highway, and every time there was a road-killed deer, I had permission, because in Texas you have to get permission from the game warden or conservation officer to remove deer from the highway. And so I went down to the highway every time a deer was killed, and I would move it to my property. Number one is going to protect the public because that was something it was going to remove a road hazard. Number two is going to protect the wildlife because I know that, that scavengers, bobcats, coyotes, badgers, buzzards, anything else will, they'll go feed on the carcass no matter where it lays. So I'd move them to my place and I set up these camera traps. And when I took this picture, what I didn't know is, because again, to this point, I hadn't seen a bobcat on my property. I'd seen evidence of them starting to eat on this carcass. And so what you can't see is that bobcat is actually, I pulled up in my driveway. This is about 100 yards, 150 yards from my house. I pulled up in my driveway, parked, got out, and started walking down the trail that I'd created to get to this. And then that bobcat saw me coming and looked up, and then it ran away. Still, I never saw the bobcat until I was going through the pictures. Now, looking at this picture, this goes to that concept I just talked about where it's one of a kind. If I'd rather have the whole bobcat in the frame, but that's where he was standing, and or that's where she was standing. Come to find out, it's because she had a couple of babies with her in some pictures I got earlier. But that's where she was standing. That's where I took the picture, and this picture ended up being the double-page spread of that magazine story. It said The Secret Life of Bobcats up there in the blank space on the upper right. So it helped illustrate a concept. And it helped, I've never tried to go back and use generative fill on this one. Don't feel like it needs to because it kind of works like it does already. And then again, the concept where I talked about is not all pictures, have to be winners. I'd mentioned before, I love turkeys, and these are some wild turkeys I took pictures of. And, I've got a close-up picture of the head of the turkey, and then a picture that's kind of the yearbook shot, then a picture of the turkey in its habitat, backlit, upper right. But one of the things I always try to do is take detail shots, and that's a turkey feather laying in the weeds. Some turkey lost it along the way. I saw it and I took a picture of it. Now, the picture like that, again, I'm not gonna of the feather, I'm never gonna hang it on the wall. It doesn't rise to that level, but it does help illustrate a concept and goes nice when you're doing a picture book of Caddo Lake or some of the adventures, when you start adding in kind of the stars of the show, but then you add in all those supporting cast of characters like the feathers or like the turkey tracks or like the habitat in which they live and all those other pictures that help tell a story, it just helps tell a more robust story. And these are even more details. When turkeys strut, they drag their wings to make noise on the ground. What I was illustrating there. Turkey on the lower right, he was too close to me where I couldn't get a whole body shot. And so he was showing off his legs to me, and so I took some pictures of his legs. And I think works good, and even the detail of the feather. And I'm gonna show you one more example. Let me, somebody tell me if you can, I don't, can you see my computer screen there? Can someone just turn their mic on and say yes or no? The browser screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is from the Cowboy. This is posted on November 9th, Cowboys and Canyonlands. And so even here, when you go out and shoot pictures like that, in the Canyonlands or of a workshop like this, the Cowboys are the star of the show. But as you kind of go through it, there's details like the stirrups and the boots and, how worn the leather is. And, then you've got this would be more the habitat shot of just the Cowboys amongst the cattle, and then, some action stuff. And it's all the same things we're talking about, whether you're shooting pictures of wildlife or whether you're shooting pictures of people that apply, and just all the details. And so if I just had cowboy picture after cowboy picture after cowboy picture in this blog entry, I just don't think it would have the engagement it needs and kind of tell the story it needs. So instead, I do a variety of compositions and focus on a variety of things from, just the good portraits of cowboys and cowgirls to that's some of the Canyonlands part that we did, to details of, some horseshoes at the chuck wagon, or the cowboy here is not the star of the show, the chuck wagon is, or the detail shots. And so again, if I'm sharing this picture, I'm getting the picture to hang on the wall. I'm not going to include a picture of these lanterns, but when you put it in context with the broader story, all of a sudden it makes sense. So tell me one more time. Should be have the PowerPoint back up if that's the case. Is that right? Somebody could tell me.
yeah.
Okay. All right. And then the last one is any questions. So let me dive into the questions here for y'all. Let's see. Austin. Let's see. Oh, we got somebody from Austin. Okay. Let's see. Oh, no. Someone said it'd be nice in the future, and if you had some f-stop and aperture and ISO to the shots. Yeah, that's a good idea. I appreciate those comments. I can tell you on the f-stop on the wildlife pictures, they're almost always taken at 5.6 or f4. I just like shooting them wide open like this one. The ISO really, it's important, but I sometimes I think it's a little immaterial. I think that the key thing to this is focusing on the technique on how you pick a good picture, what I deem a good picture from a bad picture, uh, and how to move on to the next one here. But that's good feedback though. But aside from that, I didn't see any questions in the list. So if no one has any other questions, I will move to the last uh slide in the presentation, or one of the last slides. Thought that was the last slide. Sorry about that. Still got people. We got, if you're coming in late, we've been going at this for about an hour now. So if you missed it from there, if you got confused on the time, I'll be providing the whole recording later on today, so you can watch it in recording and follow back up with me. So with that said, I encourage you to stay in touch. If you watch this webinar back and you've got any specific questions about anything, feel free to stay in touch. Russell@russellgraves.com is where to get a hold of me. And I always answer emails. Sometimes it may take me a day or two, but I always make it a point to answer emails. And I love talking photography with people. Also, if you ever get an inkling to go watch any of the videos, or maybe you want to go on a workshop with us sometime, hackberryfarm.com. We've 26. We've got a whole lot of good workshops coming up in 26. A lot of them are sold out, but we've still got 1 and 2 spots left on a few of them. So they're all really great destinations, and I think you'll enjoy the places we go and the things you learn. I tell everybody that comes along, and so far so good. We've been able to have a lot of success in doing this. But I know when we do these workshops, everybody shows up as strangers, but we all leave as friends. That's what kind of experience we have, and everybody comes away with some nice pictures too. So with that said, I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving. If you celebrate it this week, I know we've got family deals coming up on Thursday. I'm looking forward to because some of my family members I hadn't seen in a while. And with that said, there's the same bobcat I showed you earlier, eating on the same dead deer. The kind of deer is a little bit gross, but the bobcat's really cool, and he's even giving you a wink there. So anyway, if you think of anything that I didn't add, follow up, send me an email, russell@russellgraves.com. And anyway, hope to see you soon. Y'all take care. Thanks.